Are you ready, Rick?
I'm ready.
I will call the meeting to order. And
The Assistant Secretary.
Assistant Secretary.
Ricker?
Here.
Epstein here. Smith?
Here.
Okay. 3 here, 2 missing.
Got the roll call out of the way. Any announcements, Rick?
Yes, there is. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District regular board meeting. And we'd also like to welcome Dane Wadley, thank you, with CSDS, who will be giving a presentation to the board. This meeting is being fed live over the internet, and the public can view this meeting by going to www.kmpud.com and following the appropriate link there. If the public would like to make a comment or ask a question, please email me at ransel@kmpud.com, and the board will respond. Finally, we would ask the public to please identify yourselves when making comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rick. Comments from the audience on any non-agenda items? Thank you. Moving on to corrections to the agenda or consent calendar.
I may have one. My question is, I can't vote on approving the minutes. So if 2 people vote, does that count, or does it have to be deferred?
It would be the majority of the quorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's my only question.
No changes to the consent calendar
Well,
then?
it's just that I can't approve the minutes. So I guess I would request that those be voted on separately.
Okay, we will do that. We will take 6A out and... Okay, then can I have a motion to adopt?
Jeff, we were going to remove item 9F, AB 265
Okay,
from the
thank you,
agenda.
Rick. Yes, 9AF we will remove from the agenda. I understand that as that bill has been
It died in
died
committee.
in committee, so
Yeah.
there's... Okay, so then, any other changes,
No, sir.
corrections? Then, do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar 6B and 6C?
So moved. I second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we will move to 6A separately, the regular meeting minutes.
We approve the meeting minutes of May 12th as submitted.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay. Then we will have Dane. And this is a presentation as CSDA, and Dane is the Public Affairs Coordinator.
Yes, very good.
Well, welcome this morning.
Yes, thank you so much. Stand over on that side, I guess.
Or have a seat.
Anywhere you like. Okay. Okay. First stand, great. Okay.
Or feel free to sit
Yeah,
in the
wait,
chair. Yeah, we rarely stand around here.
We're very informal here.
Oh, there we go. The microphone. Sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, board and staff, community members. Just wanted to come by and, one, obviously have you guys be able to put a face to the name with CSDA and kind of welcome the district back to CSDA. I know you guys became a member again last year, kind of about a year or so ago. I understand you guys I think you guys were members probably about 8-10 years ago, something like that, kind of went off and then came back. So again, welcome back to the association. As Jeff, as you said, I'm the field coordinator for CSDA for essentially the Sierra network and actually Northern California in general, but that's what I pretty much cover. And just wanted to give you some information about some things that we're working on, a little bit more about us, obviously answer any questions that you may have here. So a little bit of background just about me. As I said, one of the first field coordinators hired. CSDA implemented our field program about 3 years ago, and I was one of the first ones to come on board. I live in El Dorado County. My professional background's in the state and local government. Actually worked for a water district before I came to CSDA, and like yourselves up there. At least I'm a board member myself too for my local water district. I live over in Cool, if you're familiar with where that is, and the Georgetown Divide PUD is our water and wastewater agency, and I'm on the board. So definitely have a special district background on both the staff and elected side now. Just to give you a little bit of overview on CSDA. The association was founded about 50 years ago, promoting good governance and best management practices, protect local government funds, autonomy and core services to the communities that obviously our districts serve throughout the state. Our strategic plan, we have legislative advocacy, and our education offerings are the primary things that we do, and I'll get into that a little bit more here as we go along, but those really are the kind of the bread and butter of CSDA, and the advocacy, and then, like I said, the training opportunities that we offer for districts. Our advocacy, public affairs. So again, we're the only association who represents all types of districts, right? So you have your Association of California Water Agencies, you have your Parks District Association, et cetera, but we're the umbrella for all of them. And it actually gives us and our members, of course, a unique opportunity, particularly legislatively, because a lot of times when issues come up in the state capitol that affect special districts, even if they may be a park issue specifically, or a fire or a water issue, CSDA, our lobbyists and our offices are often the ones who are getting the calls from the governor's office, legislative leaders. Hey, we had this bill or this idea that's going to affect special districts. What do you guys think? And we, of course, work with the other partner associations, but we are kind of the first stop, if you will, and the ones who are often included in a lot of those meetings with the leaders about local government issues. So it's a real benefit, I think, legislatively, that we offer to the members too, that sometimes might not get with some of the other associations. So,
Dane, can
yes, sir.
clarify, when you say you're the umbrella, do you mean you sort of have an overview of everything? You're not organization, bro?
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
true. I mean, they're separate organizations.
Okay.
I just meant, all types of associations. I probably phrased that incorrectly. So, all types of special districts, at least. So there's, water, fire, parks and rec, harbor districts, resource conservation districts. All of these ones may have their own separate association, but they're, we have, all of them can be members of CSTA. So. Again, you see some more information there about our District Stronger Together. One of the things that we've been working on the past couple of years is our Districts Make the Difference campaign. So, you guys probably know better than most, but districts in the field, a lot of people and public aren't always familiar with what special districts are. I know what my county is, right? I know what they do. I know what a city does, but what's this special district and what services do they provide, et cetera. So we're trying to address that through, on a CSDA level. Basically, it's a member benefit. So we have this website that you can go to, and it has all this information about special districts and some information that I put. I'll have like a packet of CSDA stuff I'll leave with you. I have a brochure in there, but it really goes through all types of districts and just trying to raise the profile of special districts across the state. Current legislative issues. So I included, or at least I believe Jessica included in your guys' packet, our most recent grassroots action brief. We put this document out monthly. It's our legislative issues that we're following for the current month, and just wanted to kind of go through a few more of these in a little bit more detail, talk about what we're working on. So the first one is SB 929 by Senator McGuire. This is a bill that CSDA supports, and actually we're sponsoring the bill, and I know it doesn't pertain to your district as much because you guys already have a website, but there are a number of districts throughout the state who don't have websites for one reason or another. And our bill would actually require districts to have a website by January 1st of 2020. I kind of get some sideways looks sometimes from people when I say that. They're like, why is CSDA requiring districts to do something? That's not usually what you guys are usually opposed to that, right? And yes, that is the case, but in this instance, with the importance of transparency and being a government agency and, the 21st century, we feel it's appropriate for districts to have websites and that they should. The uniqueness, or the unique feature in our bill is that it does allow these small districts. So we have some very small districts, Markleeville Public Utility District, for example, right? 65 connections, $30,000 budget. They're a member of CSDA. but they don't have a website. And our bill states that small districts like that who don't have maybe the full-time staff or the money to actually build a website and maintain it could opt out of that requirement. They could pass a resolution and have to have a valid reason to do so. But it just acknowledges the challenges and the uniqueness of some of the special districts. So we're trying to be proactive in, like I said, in getting ahead of this transparency issue. Basically, the requirement would be coming from the legislature whether we did this or not, and we felt it was important to run our bill with this kind of exemption language, if you will, because we feel that if someone else were to run the bill, then there would be no exemption. It'd be kind of this one-size-fits-all approach on our members. So this was also, too, a recommendation in the Little Hoover Commission report. So last year, you may have seen Little Hoover Commission, one of these review commissions at the state. They do reviews of state and local government operations and write reports to the legislature. They did a review of special districts and came out with 20 recommendations. Essentially, this bill 929 was one of those recommendations. So we're obviously trying to implement that and, like I said, just basically be proactive in the transparency arena. So the bill is passed out of the Senate. It's over in the Assembly. It'll actually be heard next week. We feel confident it's going to keep moving, but that's where it stands right now. Any questions on that? We'll just go and keep going. AB 2258. So this is a bill that we are opposed unless amended to. This is a bill kind of came out of the Little Hoover Commission report as well, but it's basically would allow or provide grant funding to LAFCOs to do some of their work. I mean, in general, LAFCOs across the state don't have a ton of money to do their municipal service reviews or other studies of local government operations, which is kind of what their charge is. So this would set up a structure to fund, basically provide some state grant funding to do those reviews. The problem for us, though, is that the bill states that any of these LAFCO-initiated actions that are funded by the state grants would increase the protest threshold. So in state law, if LAFCO say they recommend consolidating in special districts, 2 special districts, right? There's a ability to protest that, kind of like a recall or a referendum, authority. So the protest threshold currently is 10%. So you have to get 10% of the voters in that area to sign a petition that would protest it and essentially stop that action. Well, 2258 says that any of these actions that LAFCO does that are funded by these state grants, rather than that 10% threshold, the threshold would be 25%. So it's a significant increase in the threshold, to protest an action and stop an action, and we don't feel it's necessary. We don't feel the LAFCOs have really shown the need for that new authority or that increased threshold, and it also, from us too, as a local government agency and someone who has a view of local autonomy, it just makes it more difficult for districts to protest that, and for communities to protest something like a consolidation or an annexation or whatever else. So our opposed unless amended position is basically if you take out the increase in the protest thresholds, then CSDA would support the bill because we support LAFCOs doing their work and getting some more funding to do so, but not with this provision in it. So that bill is going to be heard next week. Actually, it's been double referred to 2 committees, so in the next couple of weeks it'll be heard, and we're kind of marshaling all of our forces to get that bill amended at least. So a couple other things as well. Obviously, you guys provide water up here to the community. You've probably heard about 623, the water tax proposal. The long and the short of it is the bill itself is not moving right now. It was included in the governor's budget proposal, but the proposal has actually not been moving forward in the governor's and those whole budget negotiations. So that's short term. It's very good news from our perspective. Doesn't mean it can't come back. The budget negotiations are kind of behind closed doors, dead of night, that type of thing. It's not exactly, compliant with the Brown Act, let's put it that way. So it could always come back, but as of right now, it's not been included, and we don't think it's going to be moving forward this year. So you can see some of the other notes there I point out. The loss of the supermajority of in the legislature yesterday is going to make it much more difficult because a tax increase would be a 2/3 vote. SB 998, just a couple other bills I wanted to touch on. This are some new requirements for districts before disconnecting a resident's water service and extend that process, make it more difficult to disconnect someone's service. CSDA is opposed to that bill. SB 1300, there's been a group of bills, and you probably, if you kind of go through that grassroots action brief document, there's a number of bills kind of on, essentially harassment, kind of coming out of the whole Me Too movement recently. Unfortunately, some of these bills from our perspective aren't very good for special districts, 1300 being one of them. You can see, again, it kind of allows, Senator Jackson's going about this, saying that an assertion for a harassment claim would be deemed valid if the employer didn't do everything to prevent it. We feel that puts some unnecessary burdens on districts who are obviously employers. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that one as well and show you what's going on in the legislature.
That one's not unique to special districts.
That one's not unique to special districts, no. Right. But obviously it's more of an employer thing in general, but as, of course, districts are employers, right?
Right. Can I just back up and ask you a question on your overall strategy? 'Cause
Sure.
2258, I just looked it up. It seemed to just sail through the assembly.
Yeah.
So were they not interested, or were you not involved until it got to the
No,
Senate?
I mean, we were, as I said, we have a really good partnership with Cal LAFCO, who's the sponsor of that bill. And we have a very good relationship with Assemblymember Caballero, too. She was actually CSDA's Legislator of the Year. So there was essentially kind of, we had a concerns position in the first House, and we're working behind the scenes with Cal LAFCO and going, do you guys really want to do this?
Because she's usually pretty reasonable.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of got to this point where, we haven't seen a lot of headway, and, the bill's over in the second House,
Okay.
and we need to go to this.
That makes sense.
This
Thanks.
area. So,
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you know how many special districts in California provide electric services?
oh boy,
mean, are there many?
I don't off the top of my head. I know there are about 10. I know you guys aren't a municipal utility district, but that's many of the ones who provide electric service are MUDs. There's about 10 of those. Some PUDs do. I don't have a good number. I mean, ballpark like 20, something like that, maybe. Yeah, maybe not even that much. But as I said, I know there's 8 to 10 municipal utility districts who do. So your South Placer Municipal Utility District, East Bay MUD. There's a couple other ones that are escaping me right now. But I know some public utility districts have some of that authority too. Truckee Donner, PUD, up on the North Shore, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I've just been, reading, of course, news reports about the fires and the causes of the fires and the ramifications of that, the liabilities, and I was just curious to know if it's a longer conversation, but the concern is, since we have some overhead lines, about right now, a couple miles of it, we do everything we can to keep trees out of the way and
Sure.
so on. I think we meet all standards as far as I know.
Right.
But if our line causes a fire,
Yeah.
we're in big trouble.
Right.
And so I was just wondering if other special districts are in that.
Yeah, as I said, there are at least a handful I know of. I have not heard that as much, and we have not been involved in the electric side of it as much at CSDA, and I think it's kind of something that we're kind of going to get into a little bit more, because we do have some more, some districts. I mean, East Bay.
That's why I ask, because if
Right.
it's just us and maybe one or two others, then you probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a lot of them, but obviously there's a lot of other electric issues, though, and kind of climate change, et cetera, would affect utility districts, and so.
So to answer your question, there's 38.
Special districts?
Yeah, that provide load-serving entities that are not investor-owned utilities. There's 38.
There's a municipal utility district. different from the PUD in terms of what it can do
Ye-
and what its authorities are?
Yes.
I included those.
Yeah, there's a separate section of code that outlines municipal utility districts.
Yeah, so I think that they're a bit different.
They're a bit different, but they're regulated the same way. Yeah.
So, anyways, moving on, the professional development, as I mentioned, another big part of what CSDA does. A lot of training classes for board members and staff, such as you see the required courses, the ethics, the harassment prevention training. We have a host of webinars, online computer trainings that are available to our members, so I'd encourage you to look at those. A lot of regional workshops. I noted we have quite a few of our workshops or conferences are close to you guys here coming up. Our general manager, our leadership summit, kind of the conference for the general manager position, will be up at Squaw Valley here in a few weeks, and I think Eric signed up for that, if I recall. I checked the attendee list a couple days ago, so he signed up for that. We're doing the harassment prevention training at Tahoe City on the 14th of August, and then we have our board secretariat clerk conference as well for that position in the district is over in the South Shore in October. I think you guys have someone. Jessica signed up for that one as well too. So
Randy and I just went to supervisory skills training in Sacramento on Thursday.
Sure.
It was great.
Great. So a lot of opportunities. I have some information in the packet here about all of our training events, but just encourage you to take advantage of those as you're interested. We also, too, CSDA has a kind of our sister organization, our foundation arm, the Special District Leadership Foundation, promotes best management practices, good governance in districts, and through a number of ways. And we have these various recognition programs for special districts. So for staff, board members, and districts as a whole to go through. One of our most popular ones right now is the transparency certification. The district can go through to earn a certificate. Basically, it's all these transparency checklist items, and if you meet it, then you get the transparency certificate from SDLF. So it's much more than just putting a website on and throwing your board meetings up on that. So it's a real strong program, and again, it helps us make our case in the legislature about all this, the work that we do, the training and the best management practices for special districts. Just touch on this real briefly, information sharing. If you've gone onto our website at all, there's a whole host of information, policies, procedures, et cetera, as a training resource for districts. We have a magazine that comes out every 2 months. We have a e-news that comes out weekly. You can sign up, see all of our training events, all of our legislative issues. You can always just contact me if you're interested in signing up, and would encourage you to. There's a lot of good information there. Job postings, sample document libraries, et cetera. Finding the expertise you need. So we also have on our website, we have this communities page. It's basically a big dialogue kind of group among special districts and our business affiliates. So districts will jump on there and kind of ask questions. Hey, we have this issue come up. How do other districts handle it? And you get responses from, other practitioners and special district attorneys and auditors, et cetera. So it's a real good resource. So that's free. We have various opportunities for some legal advice if you're looking for that through our on-staff legislative analyst. We have a free hour of legal advice through our legal counsel, our CSDA legal counsel as well, and some bond counsel as well. Just other resources. We have a number of our staff, although I'm not an attorney, as I mentioned, I have a special district background, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of things and answer questions for districts pretty regularly about, how do you do this or what should we be doing? So always happy to be a resource. Various kind of cost-saving, value-added member benefits, as we call them, for districts as well. Again, I have a sheet in the packet that will give you some more information on that. But that's, again, just my contact information to provide any assistance that I can. One thing I just wanted to touch on as well, so we have a CSDA, we call it the chapter, our Gold Country chapter. It's basically a group of special districts who get together on a quarterly basis to network and have training events and hear from our state legislative representatives, et cetera. I kind of give a CSDA update. The district can be a member of the chapter if you so choose. It covers this area, of course, even though we call it the Gold Country chapter, it still covers the hills. So we just encourage you to, as you can, to board members or staff to take part in some of those meetings. I can get you some more information, but trying to kind of build up that and build some dialogue amongst the districts in the Gold Country region. So I'll go ahead and stop there. Happy to answer any questions. Really appreciate your time, appreciate your support of CSDA and obviously staff's involvement. And last thing I wanted to point out too, even though it was pulled on 2065, just really appreciate you guys considering that bill and taking a position on it. And I always stress with the districts how important it is to get involved in that legislative process and kind of help us help you, right? And particularly for me as someone who, as you kind of see from my background before, I used to work in the state legislature and kind of sat on the other side. And it really is important when you get those letters from your constituents. And I used to take them from my office down to the assembly floor and give it to my boss and say, here's what your constituents think about a legislative issue. So it does make a difference. So thanks so much for prioritizing that, and hope you continue to do so going forward. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
So one question: do you track voting records in terms of Assembly and Senate members and how they vote compared to your recommendations?
We do.
Do you publish
we
that?
don't have as formal a one as some of the other agencies that or associations you would think of, like Sierra Club or the Taxpayers Association.
Right.
But we do it, and it's generally kind of the framework for our Legislator of the Year. That's one of the ways that we determine it.
But that's not a published document. We wanted
It's
to know
not a
that
published.
we
No,
could-
it's not a published document.
Because Bigelow seemed to be aligned. As I could tell, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, our issues, it covers, we interact with both sides, let's put it that way. It's, as you can see, we've got a lot of champions on both sides, people who have come from local government, and so understand, a lot of the issues that cities or districts face. And then, we also get a lot of the folks who the whole local control and local government, issue and kind of ideology really resonates with them. But there are still, issues though on both sides that we like I say,
Right.
we cover both sides, support and opposition.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions on the board?
No, it's very interesting. Appreciate you coming.
Anybody in the audience have a question? Well, thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
absolutely, thank you so much.
Did that right?
Yeah.
Very good. We'll move on to item 9 and the finances. Kelly?
Morning.
Good morning.
Eric Christensen is actually watching us online right now from Scotland. He just emailed me, so
Good morning, Eric.
any question for Eric? Fire out.
Okay, we'll start with the balance sheet on page 33 of your packet. Nothing really new to report on the balance sheet. Continuing notes about the netting of the total operating and the cushion of credit, obviously, but nothing new specifically to report on the balance sheet that we haven't discussed previously. So unless there are any questions, I'll move on from the balance sheet. Okay, onto the combined income statement. You'll see year-to-date total revenues are up from plan by $277,000. Although April revenues were down from plan by $28,000, and obviously with the resort closing so early, that does make a difference in the way we planned our budget, so some impact for April. Total operating a year to date is up from plan by $524,000, and that is reflected in not only revenues being up, but expenses, a savings of $246,000 from plan. So total net income is up from plan by $820,000, and the biggest impact of that is due to the FEMA funds that we received, almost $400,000 in FEMA funds. So coming from last year, that's a good thing for us to be able to see that in our net income. Moving on to fire department on page 37. Year-to-date total operating is just slightly under plan by $1,200, but again, obviously operating at a loss, and that we budget for them to operate at a loss, and which leads to why we have to have this fire services funding ad hoc committee. We need to find ways to fund the fire department, obviously, because there might be a time when we don't have the tax property taxes to allocate to the fire department, so it's important to find funding for that. We'll move on to water on page 40. Year-to-date revenues are down from plan by $25,000, but obviously because of that budgeting error we had with the EDUs, if you took the budgeting error away, water revenues would actually be up from plan. So water is actually total operating is down from plan just slightly at $9,300. But again, if you take that budgeting error away, then water is actually performing this year better than plan. Wastewater, year-to-date total revenues are down from plan by $17,000. Year-to-date total operating is down from plan by $34,000. And you'll see that April operating expenses are actually over plan by $1,200, but this is mainly due to salaries and wages. With all the issues we've been having at the wastewater treatment plant, we've had to have a lot more staff time at the wastewater treatment plant than planned. But still, considering that, not so bad. It could be much worse. We'll move on to electric on page 43. Year-to-date total revenues are up from plan by $173,000. And year-to-date total operating, we're up from plan by $330,000. Definitely a good year for electric, not having any major issues or lines go down, so a good year for electric, especially considering the FEMA funds we got to make up for last year's disasters.
So Kelly, if you combine the FEMA funds and then the general improvement, the general performance, what do you think the requirement will be on property taxes for the first half of the year?
I've put our current actuals into our Form 7, and then put the budget numbers for those months that we haven't, because it's a calendar year.
Yeah, right.
So I plugged those in.
Right.
And if I plug budget numbers in, it looks like we should probably we'll probably need about $600,000 in property taxes for the calendar year. So my recommendation, which is I was going to say this next month, is going to be to put about $300,000 for this year into property tax allocation for the electric fund, just to be safe.
Right.
So that we're not scrambling next year and all of our property tax revenue next fiscal year would have to go to the electric fund. So that's going to be my recommendation, is somewhere around $300,000 just to be safe.
For the first 6 months
Right.
of the next fiscal year.
Exactly.
But for the period from January to June of this year, what do you think the need would be? Or not? Is there any need?
Well, that's what the $300,000 is what I would say, I guess, for the calendar year. But you're saying for the first 6 months, there wouldn't be a need.
That's
Yeah,
kind of
there
what I
wouldn't be a
assumed.
need, but looking at the whole
Yeah.
calendar year, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And
For the purpose of figuring out how much can be allocated to each department, which is our fiscal year,
right.
what you're suggesting is 300 go to electric, and then we've got 500,000 or so to allocate to the other
For this
departments.
fiscal year, yeah.
For this fiscal year.
Which is going to help a lot with wastewater. We won't,
Right.
we might not have to do a loan
Right.
for,
Right.
from electric to wastewater this year. But the other thing I would have to, I want to mention is the FEMA funds, the bulk of the FEMA funds we received were last calendar year. So they were counted in, calendar year 2017's
Oh, I see.
Form 7. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
unfortunately. We'll move on to propane on page 46. April revenues were actually up from plan by $9,500, and it's mainly due to the fact that April was pretty chilly. We definitely were colder than usual in April. I felt like myself, I didn't get to turn my heat off as I would like to in April, so total operating for propane is up from plan by $81,000. And again, propane funding itself, not yet building a reserve though. I would like to mention that, is that propane definitely funds itself. It's not something that we lose money, but we have not been able to build a reserve in propane. That is something that I think we need to talk about in the upcoming fiscal years, is finding a way to fund things like the new propane tank. We need to make sure that we can start building a reserve in propane to do those types of things.
Well, what happens with the 85,000 in income for this year? Where does that end up?
It stays in in the general fund. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we could choose to move that to a reserve.
Oh, I see.
But yeah,
All right.
so it stays in the operating fund, obviously, but
Right.
we haven't yet built a reserve in propane or begun to build a reserve
Okay.
in propane. So that's something we might want to think about doing, so that we have that reserve to fund things like a new
Right.
propane
If we
tank.
do that, if we build a reserve and say this is the propane reserve, and then something comes up where we have to have that cash to use for some other purpose, are we free to do that, or does that then become, oh no, now you're borrowing from something, and whatever's borrowing is going to have to pay it back?
That's the way it would have to happen.
So that's the downside
We
of it.
are required to
Yeah.
to loan money to other funds, and it's something that we've just started doing, but we are required to. If water needs money and propane is the fund that has it, we're required to loan that money to water, and water would
Oh, so
have to pay
that's
it.
regardless whether it's in a reserve or just in
Yep.
a cash account.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right,
But that's
okay.
such a nominal amount
Yeah.
anyway.
Mhm.
That's not much of a...
Right.
Kelly, but if you needed to use the reserves for, the propane reserve to supplement propane operating, would you need the loan?
No, no,
Yeah.
it's just propane's money, regardless of whether we put it in a reserve or it's an operating cash, it belongs to propane. And that's all I have on income statements, unless there are any questions.
Pretty amazing year, huh?
That the FEMA funding that we got has definitely helped.
Well, plus it snowed at the right time.
Yeah,
Well, and it didn't snow at the right time.
right. Definitely a different year than last year, for sure. We'll move on to April EBITDA. We are $287,000 total EBITDA, which is $35,000 better than planned for April. And year-to-date, we are $458,000 better than planned. So, which is reflected in our cash, and why we were able to move that additional $500,000 to reserve for electric for the upcoming payment we're going to have to make to PG&E. So, it's definitely been an easier. It's going to be an easier check to write to PG&E, since we actually have been able to put some cash aside for that. So May preliminaries. May is actually up from plan in operating revenues by $42,000. And year-to-date, we are up $320,000. And this is on page 50 of your packet. So a good May. And again, it was chilly in May too, so that being said is what I think is pushing up our revenues for May, because it was chillier than average May. You can see May 18 metered versus budget for kilowatt hours. We metered 350,000 kilowatt hours, which we budgeted for 328,000, so a variance of $22,000 or 22,000 kilowatt hours. And as compared to last May, we metered 408,000 kilowatt hours, so less than last year, but obviously we were in a different spot last year with a lot more snow. So propane, we metered 945,000 cubic feet. We budgeted for 806,000 cubic feet, so 139,000 cubic feet better than plan. And last May we metered 1 million cubic feet, so 58,000 cubic feet less than last May. And then our historical kilowatt hours metered, you can see that in 2013 we metered 540,000 kilowatt hours. But again, with all of the corrections we've made to our metering, we had a lot of metering issues back then. We had to, give some cash back to people for metering issues. So I feel like this is this is a more realistic May, I think, with 350,000 kilowatt hours metered. And we'll move on to cash flow. In May, we had $2.6 million in operating cash and $764,000 in our cushion of credit, leaving us with a total of $3.3 million in total operating cash. We budgeted for $2.4 million, which puts us at $904,000 above plan. We did move $500,000 from operating to our reserve in anticipation of the payment that we're going to have to make to PG&E. Going forward, our operating cash still shows December of 2018 as our low point. But again, this is going to get updated once the budget is approved for the years going forward.
So the other question I have on the cash flows is looking forward to the budget, assuming that we approve the budget. For 2019, it's got $600 and some thousand of capital. Now, half of that is for electric, which we may not do. So let's just say $300,000, half of that is wastewater. But I don't see any outflows for capital expenses in the cash flows, in these cash flow sheets. Mm-hmm. So will those be added, or do you just put those in as they actually happen?
Generally, we would put them in as they happen. They are in the budget in my cash flow. I have them on there. This is they were not ever included on this cash flow, but they are included in the budget cash flow. So I can definitely update this to show those capital
maybe we
expenses.
should just talk about that in our next finance committee
Sure.
meeting. Just because when I look at December of this December, the operating forecast is, not counting cushion of credit, is $700,000, and if we actually spend a certain amount, I mean, we'll be down really low.
And in the past, I think that's why it wasn't included, because we were only going to do it if we had the cash to do it. So that I think that's why in the past we haven't included capital in this cash flow. But I'm happy to, to put that in there so that we can actually see.
Yeah, what I was finding myself doing, saying, oh, we get down to 700 plus 700, 1.4 million, that's not bad. But then I look at the budget and say, well, wait a minute.
We're
We may not
supposed to-
actually have that cash.
Exactly.
So I think it's a topic of conversation
Sure.
with Standish and the Finance Committee.
I 100% agree. Because that's something that I say all the time is, we'll say that we've budgeted for that, and I'll say, but we don't have the cash for that.
Right.
Like we've budgeted for it, but
Yeah.
we
Okay, good.
can't do it. So I 100% agree with you. Moving on then to budget variances. One new thing got added to the list was the leach field pump for $6,500. This is something it's actually a depreciable asset. It's something that, we've put on into our fixed assets, but it wasn't something that was budgeted for. Other than that, we've just updated the iPad app development through May to Corey. That wasn't budgeted for. But that's the only new thing on the budget variances. And unless there are any questions, we'll move on. So really, there was only one change made to the budget since the last iteration of it. The one change was we added $50,000 to fire for the fire funding. Yeah, right. That fire funding study is what we were calling it, I believe. And you can see if you look at the fire budget that $50,000 is actually coming from reserve. We just don't have the property taxes to be able to pay for that type of thing. So we wanted to make sure that you could see that it's a study that probably needs to happen, but we don't actually have the cash to do the study, so that would have to come out of the reserve to pay for that. So, but that's the only real change to the budget. I haven't really gotten any other suggestions or changes. So, unless anything comes in new, this is what we will be presenting for approval on July 1st.
Looks good to me.
Okay, I like that. I'm happy about that.
Anything else to add on the 18-19 budget?
I don't have anything.
Okay, then we'll move on to the Bank of West resolution.
So this resolution is basically stating that.
I'm sorry, you didn't give me a chance. I didn't talk about. Is the future cash flow? That was not in the packet, right?
No, it's not in the packet.
Okay.
I haven't done the future cash flow yet. I haven't you mean like the updated one that I would do once the budget is approved?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't updated that cash flow
Okay,
yet.
but have we seen what it would look like? I missed the last meeting, so maybe it was presented there. Or
No,
not?
it was not presented there. Once the budget is approved, then I would do then I would put in all those budget numbers.
Right, but how do we know that the cash flow works out without seeing that in advance?
I guess I'm not. Maybe we're talking about two different cash flows.
Well, I'd like to see, if we approve this budget, what's the 5-year cash flow look like with this budget approved?
Okay, I can definitely present that. I can get that out. I don't have it in this packet,
Okay,
obviously.
and that was
Yeah.
my first question. So can you do that early?
Sure.
So we have a chance. That's the only thing there were a bunch of spreadsheets that Eric did, and my request was to actually take the future anticipated expenses, including new debt service, plug it into your cash flow and make sure that the numbers are about the same.
Okay, I
And
can
so
definitely do that.
I'd very much like to see that before we, earlier than the next board meeting.
Understood.
Okay, thanks.
And the one thing I didn't do is add up all the property tax allocations. I assume they.
They're still at zero, like, they net out to
No, I
zero.
mean,
Yeah.
the proposed, yeah, it nets out to zero.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not over allocating.
Okay.
Yeah. For 19, there's actually some, for the future years, 20 through 23, there's actually some unallocated property tax revenue, so,
Yeah, well, we wish.
yeah, exactly. But it's not over allocating in any years.
Great.
Anything else on the budget?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, Resolution 1803 is basically stating that we desire to engage in the new loan, or not new loan, the refinancing of our current real estate loan that we have with Bank of the West, and that we have received the commitment letter from them and agreed to it, and we're going to sign that. So that's basically what Resolution 1803 is, that we need the board to take action on.
Just refresh my memory, the current amount that we've drawn on the current loan is how much?
The current loan, well, we received $700,000 is what the current loan was.
Right.
We have about $360,000 left in principal to pay back on that.
Uh-huh.
So the refinance, we're looking for $800,000 or whatever the buildings appraise at, is what they've told me.
Yeah, the lesser of
Yeah,
those two,
right,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
So they'll net out the what we have remaining to pay. So we're looking at getting about an influx of somewhere around $400,000.
Okay, that was my question.
Right.
How do they do an appraisal? Because there aren't a lot of people that would want to buy this particular building if we were selling it.
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question. The appraiser is coming up. Rick spoke to him yesterday. So we got several bids for appraisals to come through, but it's like a blind bid. Obviously, the bank doesn't want to. They can't pick people to do the appraisal. So,
Right.
but he did call, and he is coming. So,
Okay.
but I don't know how that works.
It
to be
wouldn't
quite
compare
honest.
to other equivalent buildings in the
Right.
valley, for
It's
example.
exactly, and I think that's something that the Jim Neal, who is our go-between at the bank, he had mentioned that this is a very specific area, so it's a little difficult to do an appraisal on buildings in this area, and especially since they can't include the land in the appraisal. It's just the buildings, because the land is public land, so they can't include that in the appraisal.
Right.
So it's less than, the appraisal comes through at less than what you would think it would, because it's just the buildings and not the land.
Mhm. Okay.
Any other questions on that?
Well, my other one is, would we sign this? This would only be signed after the appraisal comes in. I mean, executed in terms of
The loan would only be executed, right?
Yeah.
But we do have to sign the commitment letter.
Yes, I
Yeah,
understand.
right, okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the resolution, which is a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District approving credit requests with Bank of the West and reaffirming authorized district officers and signatories on bank accounts.
Yes, I move we approve Resolution 18-03.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I did notice that Eric's signature, I think, is required, yeah?
I'm sorry?
Is Eric Christensen's signature required on this?
No, just the board president.
Just the board president?
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 9D, performance reporting and aquifer levels. And I don't see Brandy here, so I take it-
Randy's in Mississippi.
Brandy's not in the office today. Slide down a little bit. Sorry, Drew. So for performance reporting, for the last month, Brandy prepared a nice report for me. For electric, it looks like her major comment was that almost 62,000 kilowatt hours were underbilled for the use of Chair 11. So she added this to the May metering total. So that's why the distribution losses for May were negative for electric. It went from a 12% down to a 3%. And for the year, annual percentages, or for the percentage annually is at 12%. For propane, we're still at negative 5%. And as you can see, that trend's been going on for quite some time now. And we'll see what happens in June. Moving on to, moving on to water, which is this information is in the board packet on page 92. We're at 34%, and we're not exactly sure why it jumped up so much. We talked to the water superintendent, Derek Dornbrook, and he indicated that we did do a lot of hydrant flushing in the system, which may be a portion of that, and the other portion may be due to tank levels and getting the readings at different times. So I've asked Brandy to take another look at that and make sure we don't have a leak. I don't think we do. Looking at the aquifer levels and the pumping patterns that we have, it's really consistent to years past, but I am alarmed at a 34% increase for water and what the reason why is. So we'll chase that down and let you know. And then finally for wastewater, in April it was 81% unidentified. In May it was 82%, and we believe this is consistent with I&I in this time of year. But the numbers are very large, and as you know, staff is taking great measures this summer to hopefully eliminate and reduce our I&I.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this is worse than a year ago?
It is worse than a year ago.
And we spent all this money fixing a bunch of leaks, and now it's worse?
Yep.
How do you reconcile that?
It could be the influent meter coming into the plant is not calibrated accurately enough, where we're getting higher numbers than what we really have. I'm not exactly sure, so we're trying to boil this down to figure out what's going on. Is it a formula error? Is it a meter error? Is there a bigger problem in the system now that we're not aware of since last year? So I think through our I&I collection study that we're going to do this summer and the mitigation measures that we plan in the meadow, I think we can try to isolate down some of the system, a collection system that we think we have bigger problems in. But yeah, the numbers are alarming. So
Is there any way of going back and looking at what we did last year and seeing how that's performing?
Yes and no. We do have some data. Actually, Drew did a lot of work in the field this last year to see what the flows were and what the patterns were, but it's not collected in a format that we could do a true comparison, section by section or area by area. It's just like guesstimate of flows.
Yeah,
So-
I'm just interested. We went in, we did a lot of work, we TV'd, we made corrections and everything, but going back and just checking to see is all that stuff holding up.
Mhm.
Because I share Bob's concern. It seems that we're just treading water here.
No, we're going
Literally.
backwards. We spent money and we're worse.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure some of the data is, as I mentioned, meters, but also within the treatment plant, we did have some recycling in the treatment plant with some membrane failures. So we're actually metering the water twice coming in the plant. So
Can you explain? I don't quite follow that.
when we had the I&I issue with the rain on snow event, wastewater treatment basically hit capacity, and then it overflowed back into the main lift, and we pushed that same water back through the system
Okay,
again.
but did that happen in May?
It happened in April, but I think we have some fallout that happened in May as well. So
I see.
Again, I'm not sure what's going on with the treatment plant and the
Okay.
data that we're collecting.
All right, and when we move it back into holding, do we measure that?
We do, but
So
it's,
that could be subtracted.
it could be subtracted. So I was going to talk to Brandy, Derek. Let's
Yeah.
boil down these numbers. Let's make sure this is really accurate. Is it I&I, or is it issues within the treatment plant with the data collection? Getting an email. However, I just got an email from Eric. You know, we did we did a survey of the Meadow collection system, and we took a look at manhole 99, where we put a lot of money and time into making the repair. And those repairs, clearly, through observation, were working compared to what it was last year, working quite well. So,
Well, that's good news.
Otherwise, so that kept us from getting to 100%.
yes.
Can you go above 100%? You can't, right?
And then another comment from him is, again, the system continues to age, and he believes that wastewater will continue to get worse. So, again, the writing's on the wall. We definitely need to pay more attention to this and also try to get as accurate numbers as we can. So,
And we don't have any sub-metering anywhere. So
No,
we
sir.
could is that a possibility, or does that not make sense?
I'm not familiar with it. I believe they do make sub-meters that you could put in, talking with Eric, but it could be a costly, expensive thing
Yeah.
to do.
Okay.
And where would you drop it in? And
So can you just take from this conversation a high degree of anxiety and concern that should be remedied in the next board meeting?
could be on the board minutes maybe, right,
Okay.
Jess?
All right.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
All right, we'll leave it at that for now.
As I recall, last year, June was high as well because of the
There's so much melt.
so much melt. So next month's report should show a significant decrease from what it was last year. So it'd be interesting to see how that comes out.
Yeah, it should.
Any further questions on performance reporting? We'll move on to 9E, loop road conditions.
Thanks to Drew for being out in the field for a couple days. You see we do have a before and after photo, same location. As the board is aware, we sent Vail Resorts a letter dated May 16th indicating our displeasure with the condition of Loop Road and that action should be taken to correct the issue. Vail Resorts, and in the board's packets on page 93 is the letter. On page 95 is the response. Essentially 2 days later after receiving the letter, the resort did some what appeared to be cold patching and also backfilling with road base. And as you drove through today to get to the meeting, you can see the current condition of Loop Road.
So what is the district's point of view on the condition of the road now, post this patching?
It's better. It's not ideal. I do understand that Vail doesn't want to do major repairs to the road until the stormwater runoff issue is addressed. As you can see from the parking lots and from the roadway edges, there really isn't a channeling of water away from the road. It tends to percolate under and around. That said, it's adequate for now for emergency services to come and go, for the propane deliveries to come and go. However, I am fearful with the next major rain event, thunder shower. As Kelly was showing me a picture yesterday of last year, there was snow on the ground here. The resort has to go out and plow and push snow around. It's going to put the road back in the condition it was prior to the district writing the
Yeah,
letter.
that's really what I was wondering. Is this like a 3-month fix or a 6-month fix at best? And
Yeah,
And so we'll be in the same state, you know, in the middle of next winter as we were this winter.
We should get there well before then,
yeah.
right? I mean, any good rains this summer, that'll
So-
start to deteriorate.
At this time, this is from Eric, they've satisfied the intent of the contract, but as it fails, we'll notify them of future deficiencies,
Right.
so.
Well, I just saw that they've only made a profit of about about $250 million in this past quarter. So I can understand why they can't
Yeah, that
repair
makes
this
sense.
road.
Any other thoughts on the loop road? We'll move on to item 9G, USDA resolution.
And just for reference, you'll see, this is a mark that's out in the middle of the road next to the propane vaporizer. Just an FYI, these are monitoring wells that the resort was required to put in after the diesel spill last year. And as you know, it resulted in a brand-new fuel farm for them, which they're getting ready to put online in the next, I think, couple months. So when they do that, they'll eliminate the temporary fuel field here. But they'll have to continue to monitor for a period of time. And so if you see this mark, this isn't a district-related monitoring well. This actually belongs to the resort and is also monitored by the state as well. They're the ones that are required to have that put in.
Where's that located?
Right next to the recycling bins and vaporizer. You'll see it actually in the middle of the road or kind of on the side of the road. And then there's 6 more monitoring wells in the lower 7 parking lot. And walking through the lot yesterday, they're all, of course, raised up 4-6 inches. So next winter, snow removal in the parking lot's going
Should
to be,
level them.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
level them out nicely. Unless they have, Kevin Cooper's here with the resort, may not know. Do they have any plans of filling the parking lot or raising it up? Yeah. So anyway, it'll be a challenge for snow removal operations for them.
Rick, I want to back up to wastewater.
Sure.
So I looked up last year's number, and it was worse. It was
Was it?
last year was 92, this year is 80, whatever, 82. So congratulations on the improvement.
Oh, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let the minutes reflect that.
Well, maybe it illustrates the fact that we rarely have year-over-year comparisons in a lot of the data, and maybe that would be beneficial, particularly on things, because some things, the annual data is not as revealing as the monthly.
Yeah, I actually made a note of that as well, maybe go back 5 years
Yeah.
on the data as well.
So I was working from memory, which is clearly faulty. So you can retract my previous irritation.
It should
10%
stay.
improvement. Okay, and
So moving back to the agenda.
USDA resolution.
Yes, we did receive our C8 loan, and I want to thank Rodney Peach, Howard Barnes, Kelly and her staff for gathering all the information. We did receive a letter this week from the USDA, which said, we basically pleased to advise you that our loan guarantee commitment in the amount of $3,765,000 has been approved to the Kirkland Meadows Public Utility District. The proceeds of this guaranteed loan, designated as C8, are to be used for the Kirkland Meadows PUD to finance only the system extensions and additions described in the RUS Form 740C, cost estimates and loan budget and electric borrowers, dated March 21st, 2018. As a part of the acknowledgement of this loan, we're required within 14 days to, acknowledge that we received the approval, and 2, sign an attached felony form, which is an AD 3031, and Jessica will be providing that to the board after the meeting. In the course of accepting this loan, before you today is the resolution. Sorry, jumping around between emails from Eric and board packets. Last.
Resolution, that's page 112.
Thank you. Get over there. So as I mentioned before, as part of the loan requirement, the district's required to approve the resolution, which gives the officers and manager authorization to sign the rest form 595. And so in the board's packet on 112 is resolution number 18-04. Again, allowing the authorized signatures for the Board President Jeff Smith, Board Secretary Peter Dornberg, and General Manager Eric Christensen to sign the rural utility services. So I'll give back to you.
Okay, and just for the audience's benefit, this is to approve a C8 loan. This is a RUS loan, guarantee commitment from the USDA Rural Utility Services in the amount of $3,765,000. So, do I hear a motion to approve resolution number 18-04?
The only thing I just wanted to comment on is looking at the current 30-year Treasury. Yesterday's rate was 3.08, which is pretty close to where we were when we did the original one. A year ago, it was slightly lower. It was 2.84, so it hasn't made a large change over the last year. So I move we approve 18-04.
And I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So this is where I was wondering, this is where I saw a certificate of authority. When is it, these have to be signed within the 14 days?
Mhm.
And it requires Eric's signature?
Yeah, Jessica and I were talking about that this morning, and how to get that executed.
And
Just-
Peter's too, I don't know how long Peter's gone.
Peter will be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check with Howard Barnes on how quickly we need to get the Form 675 signed. I'm gonna see if we can wait until Eric comes back for that, and I'll collect the other signatures today. But if not, then I will work out with Eric how we can get this.
You're going to have to go to Scotland.
I might have to go to Scotland.
I'd be happy to
That
handle
sounds
it.
fine by me. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a fast-moving, as you can see, the two board packets that went out. We wanted to get it in there and get it done, but there is maybe, according to Howard, we may not have to do everything all at one
Yeah, we may
time.
be a little ahead of the game at this point.
Right.
But I'm going to check with him.
Well,
to
I just
see.
wanted to comment that we're well ahead of the game in terms of timing, so I really appreciate the effort that everybody's put in, because, I mean, I didn't expect to see this until August, and it's early June.
From what I understood with, when I spoke to Howard, the most important thing to get signed was the commitment letter back to Russ, and I think the other forms, like Jess said, I feel like we'll be okay to get Eric to sign them when he gets back. It was just the commitment letter, which only Jeff needs to sign the commitment letter, so I think we'll be okay there.
Okay.
And Eric's chiming in, he says he can sign, scan, and send it back, it's no biggie. Yeah, so it's not a big deal.
Darn, they don't have to do this.
Oh, darn.
Well, good. We'll move on to item number 10, operations report.
Wastewater. treatment plant. So yet again, we've had a major failure at the treatment plant. This week's failure was the compressor system and the pneumatic valves. This is something we reported on last month as well, where the valve systems that control both membrane trains, the valves themselves, the last time it happened, it was valve number 253. I think I showed you this picture at the last board meeting. Essentially failed, and a couple different issues. One, it could be the controls themselves getting older and actually wearing out. Two, it could be water within the compressed air line. Or three, it could be a sensor within this tank, this compressor tank, that's not shutting off because of, again, age. This week was help from Central Sierra Controls, as well as Steve Neff, our in-house electrician, able to try to troubleshoot the system down to solve the problem. And we believe it's a couple of sensors and remote relays that are acting up. And so we've since ordered those. Central Sierra said, oh, we can get them for you. They'll be here in 2 weeks for 3 times the price. Steve and Brandy were able to chase the parts down online. And we actually got them here yesterday, and Ed's going to be installing them today. Of course, when we had the consultant come up from Aqua Sierra Controls, the whole system actually just failed right on the spot. And that was another issue that Steve had to chase down and figure out what was going on. So we continue to have problems, but we are able to run the plant on a backup compressor with one train, and luckily the flows are low enough now where one train's fine. We haven't used any emergency storage, but it just illustrates the need for the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, and staff's dedication to try to keep things going. So I appreciate Brandy and Steve's work this week on that. These pneumatic valves, we have, I think, over 32 of them total. We've been stealing parts from each of the valves to make things work. So we're going to probably see some expenses in wastewater this month in the association with the repairs. So I think Kelly's been primed for that from staff. The other big thing for water and wastewater was the initial meeting with Syntec for the feasibility study occurred this week. They came out with a full crew of people that it was interesting. Some of the people Eric actually had worked with in the past and was unaware of it, but it was 5 individuals that came out. There was a general contractor who actually climbed on the roof of the wastewater treatment plant, and you can kind of see that little white dot lower left-hand corner of the building. That's been the in-house patch repair staff's been doing, but he got up there and took a look around to see what the improvements were for the facility, the structure itself. They had a control person looking at SCADA. They had a administrator looking at data and records for the plant, history and logs, which they're going to scan into a PDF format and actually give it back to us in a PDF so we can have this information on the network. And I think they walked out of here with 3 very large boxes of information, which they assure we're going to get back, because it was our operation and maintenance manuals, again, the coke membrane contracts, the layouts, the schematics. Just a ton of stuff we wouldn't want to lose, but so they're going to get it back to us. So work has begun, and I'm sure we'll get a report or an interim report from them on what they're finding. And that's about it for wastewater. Is there any questions on so far? Moving on to fire department. We've got a couple things coming, as you know. We've got the summer festival planned on June 30th. The next meeting is going to be on June 21st. This is the summer festival committee meeting. And we're going to, at the final stages of preparation for the event. We've received over about $10,000 worth of donations so far, and there's
We're up to 11.
Oh,
Yeah, we're up to over $11,000 in cash donations already.
nice. And 108 people have signed up for the event so far, so we're pretty much on track. everything's here, all the classes here. Cheryl Stern has been doing an excellent job with the silent auction. And Vail Resorts, their Epic Promise coordinator, it's not Amanda, I can't remember her name, is also looking to reach out to Vail Resorts to bring more volunteer help in from the outside to help us serve and actually put on another fantastic event. So, again, staff's feeling fairly confident. The only thing that we're hoping for is some great weather. Also in this picture right here is we've had several new volunteers for the fire department from Vail Resorts. I think half their food and beverage team is now starting to volunteer, as well as their security team. So this was the meeting just 2 days ago, and I was really pleased to have such a big turnout, which allows us to do more out in the field, building inspections, laying hose lines, doing some of the ladder carrying drills and so forth. More activities, which really benefits the fire department.
So, Rick, what's the current number of volunteers?
Active members, I think it's 9, but I've got to confirm that. Some of these people literally just walked in the door. We're doing the application process now, and they're on probation until we can get all the information and we're satisfied. But I think it's 9. We had 4 respond to a call yesterday afternoon, and 3 of the 4 didn't work for the district, so that was nice. So it's an improvement. And I also want to say that the results came back from our ISO review, and I'm pleased to announce that we are still maintaining a 4. The overall points was 67.5, and ISO 3 is actually 70 points. So Chief Tourette will be giving a board presentation at the July meeting to talk about this survey of our department, but also maybe talking about next steps, how to get us to the next point, which could be a real big reach for us. It's all about staffing and equipment. We don't have a ladder truck, but there might be ways that we can improve within our training and through communications. So again, there'll be a staff report in July. But the good news is our insurance rates aren't going to go up. And that concludes my operation report, unless there's any questions from the board.
I just wanted to confirm one thing. The chili cook-off we've turned back to the community association. Is that correct?
That is correct.
For this year. Okay.
I've exchanged some email with Jeff and so on, and that is that if that's the desire, it still has to be board. We have to give it up because we took it. We took it by board action last year, and I don't think it was just for the year. I think we were going to do it. It's probably just a formality, but it's not something that can just be done.
Yeah,
Can't reverse a board action without the board reversing the action.
Yeah, staff reviewed the minutes from that board meeting. It wasn't clear whether it was a one-time or forever, so you're right. We should put that on the agenda for next.
Just to
for
formally
July.
do it. I don't have any disagreement with the decision. I was just surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised too.
I read about it in the newsletter.
Yeah, Eric, myself, been talking to John, and I guess I didn't realize that it was a board action, so probably should have advised Eric that it needed to be a board decision, so apologize for that. And Eric was unaware, he just didn't know, so.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Okay, anything else on the operations report?
No, sir.
Standing committee reports.
Let's see, I don't think the Finance Committee has met since the last board meeting. We meet again before the next board meeting. The Planning Committee has not met because of, we just don't have the topics. But Jess, could you alert all the Planning Committee members that our next meeting is now July 5th at 4 p.m.? Because I don't think that's been formally provided.
No, I wasn't sure if you guys had set.
Yeah, so let's set that.
July 5th, 4 p.m.
Yes, please.
Got it.
So that's my 2 committees.
Okay, IT has not met since the last time.
Yeah, personnel is not met.
And then there's operations.
Operations, I don't know, has operations had a meeting, or?
We did have a meeting, and without having the agenda in front of me, I know there was some discussion about electric vehicle charging and sub-metering. Brandy Benson presented a request from an HOA. An individual lives in an HOA who wanted to install a sub-meter. And the question was, the liability and responsibility of the line leading to the sub-meter. Through the discussion of the committee, there was thought of putting the responsibility on the HOA to basically monitor and actually receive payment for a sub-meter. Let me take a step back. We have right now in Meadowstone one homeowner who has a sub-meter off a panel, and we read that meter and we bill that person for it. There's another individual in the valley who would like to do the same thing. The question is the responsibility of the district and the liability of the district of having a sub-meter off a main panel. If you have one and then next thing you know you have 12, is that going to be too much load for the main panel? We didn't design it this way, we're adding on to it. So again, how do we as a district want to have a rule and regulation for this? So out of that committee, there was an idea of saying, okay, why don't we put the responsibility back on the HOA and let them basically buy the sub-meter and do it off their main house meter, and then they work directly with the homeowner or the customer to seek revenue from the meter. We did get a letter back from one of the HOAs, and this is something that's going to go through operations again to be further discussed, but that was a big topic in the operations committee meeting. Of course, the wastewater treatment plant was another item that we talked about at length, especially the feasibility study that's coming through, and then of course collection systems and how we're not going to raise manholes in the meadow. We're going to do in-house repairs and try to keep the aesthetics of the manholes in the meadow essentially the same. However, know that we will be going into the meadow to do the work. If you see the backhoe going in, we're going to go in, do it, get out, and make sure we keep it as clean and as nice as it is now. So, and that was about it for Operations Committee.
Okay, thank you. The Temporary Advisory Committee, the Fire Services Funding Committee.
Yeah, the committee has been active. To remind you who's on it, Tony Sirica, who's treasurer for East Meadows, John, Alan, Bruce Gianola. Have I missed anybody? Bruce, John? Tony, yeah. Anyway, we have come to a preliminary recommendation that we would like to discuss with the Finance Committee and the Board, and we'd really like to have this on the agenda for July. I think we've done a pretty good overview of about 10 or 12 methods of raising funds, and in that overview we've had discussions with Terry, and we're going to set up a meeting hopefully in July, maybe early
Right,
July.
Carol will be back from vacation on Monday, so we'll
Yeah.
set it up. I'll find out when her
Yeah.
dates are available.
We met with Lynn and the county executive there and the fire chief, the Amador County Fire Chief, Amador Fire Chief. We've talked with Dick Shanahan. We've talked to Doug Perini. We've, of course, talked with Bruce, KCA. And Eric's had an opportunity to talk with the past auditor at Amador to understand how our property tax calculation is done and so on. So we've got a good overview of things. We kind of know there's no ideal solution that's feasible. But the 3 or 4 that we think we should focus on are the ones in this communication letter. So at the end of the meeting, we had decided that since it is possible, if not probable, that we'll be going to the community to vote on either a special tax, or if absolutely necessary, an increase in the assessment, we should start communicating now the need and what we've done and what the options we've looked at and so on. So that's the communication letter. We'd like to get this out probably next week to the HOAs so that they're available to the HOA meetings in July. So if you have any thoughts, this letter is a product of the committee. Everybody weighed in, good comments. It's been edited several times to reflect those comments. What we lack are specifics. So for example, if we were to do a sales tax, we have no idea what sales are. We have no idea, therefore, what the percentage would be that would make a difference, et cetera. We just don't have that information. We know how much Alpine County, from the budget, we can see that Alpine County has a certain amount of sales tax revenue that they can use in their budgeting, but we don't know what percentage of that ours is. And I don't know if the resort would give us that information. I doubt it. And the Amador County folks warned us that getting this information is difficult, although they offered to help us get that information. Similarly, one conversation that we've had with Terry and with Lynn Morgan is the possibility of increasing the percentage that we receive from property taxes, nothing to do with what's already provided to the counties and provided back to us, but for future increments. Could be a higher percentage for future increments. Well, again, what would that future increment be that would be beneficial to us? What would we talk about? Well, we have to sort of figure out the value of future development here, and the pace of it, and so on. So there's a lot of detail and calculations that need to be done at this point. But first, we want everybody to be on board that yes, these are the 2, 3, 4 methods that we should be approaching.
I have one comment. I thought this was a very good letter. It capsulized everything in one page. And I think it's a good letter to send out. So,
Yeah, my only suggestion is it could include a link to the fire services plan that we spent a year writing. Because if someone wants to understand what currently happens and how many activities there are, whatever, it's all there and it's totally, I mean, Rick spent a lot of time on it. I think referencing it in this letter would be helpful.
Do we have a link to that in our website already? I mean, is it available via our website already?
It's posted online.
That's what I mean.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so we could just refer to it.
Yeah, you just need to refer to the link.
Okay. I don't know, Rick, Jess?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where it is on the website, but I believe it's on.
But I'll send you the original document, and if you could just add that link in an appropriate place. Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely. I'll put it right now, of course, but I'll look and see if we can.
Yeah. And then the intention, again, is to, again, I'm not so familiar, I guess send it out to the HOA presidents. Do we have that list?
Yep.
We do, we have to add the required rest language to the bond to option for other change.
So I guess it's going to turn into a 2-page.
No, it's still going to be one page.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little required language.
Yeah.
We might also let them know that it's going to be on the July agenda.
Yeah,
Right.
in a cover letter, in a cover note to the presidents, just say, this is the communication, appreciate your distributing it to your members, and this topic will be on our July board meeting.
Yeah, I found the December draft. It may not be here. So anyway, you may need to upload the current one and remove the draft.
Yeah, could we be sure that it's the final document? That's it.
Thank you, Eric. Moving on to item 13, general discussion, opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, and I know Eric has one topic.
Yeah, I was contacted by Rick Lind. Rick is somebody that I've known for a while, some years. He has a consulting firm associated with energy projects of various kinds, gaining approvals for those projects and so on. But he's also on the board of an organization called the Tahoe Prosperity Center. Do you know about that, Terry? They were formed several years ago, and Rick contacted me then. It's a public-private, well, it's a non-profit organization, but it draws from the public agencies as well as private companies. I believe Vail at Heavenly is a member. You know, as the title says, what they want to do is make the whole Tahoe area more reliably prosperous. And I know they've worked on things like high-speed internet, for example, that kind of infrastructure and so on. Anyway, he has asked if they could make a presentation to the board, very much like what CSDA did today. And I said I would bring it to the board for consideration.
I think it's worthwhile for anyone interested to go into their website, the Tahoe Prosperity Center, because it gives a description of what they do. I think it'd be worthwhile because I think the things that they're trying to do are things that we need to do as well. Transportation, communication, all of these infrastructure things that they're trying to branch out from Tahoe, and we are a little bit out of the sphere of influence, but I think we would benefit from those, and we might be able to connect somehow ourselves. As far as having them come in here, I'm a little concerned that the July meeting is getting a little too crowded, so it'd have to be August or September. But I certainly, I think it'd be a good
Well, what I'm going to do is
presentation.
just email Rick and say that we would be pleased to hear from him, and he should contact Eric Christensen to schedule a date. Okay.
Good.
Oh, I have one other topic, and Bob can probably answer this right away, but the recent legislation, I'm just wondering, the recent legislation that's requiring solar panels to be put on every new house in California, except for under certain circumstances, is that something we should be even thinking about when we think about our projections for electric consumption? Or is it too minimal here to even worry about?
I think that from what I understand from Brandy, is that we only have a requirement for 10%. Like we can stop at 10% of our customers being able to sell back into our system. So even with any new solar systems, we don't have to sell back to more than 10% of our customers, if I remember that correctly. So I don't know how much of an impact that will have.
Another way of saying that is we only need 10% to meet our renewables. However, we would encourage others to obviously go solar.
No, that becomes different. So right now, we subsidize the 6 houses that have solar, right? Because it costs them well less than 66 cents a kilowatt hour to build it. So if you imagine the worst case scenario where every roof had all the solar needs, I mean, well before that we'd be out of business. So the law restricts it to, once you get to 10%, you no longer have to purchase the power that they generate. Yeah.
So this is an interesting situation then. Homes that are built have to have the solar.
Well, unless well, there's a process to demonstrate that it's not practical or infeasible. So in this particular climate, you know,
I don't know, 6 homes are doing it, so.
But
right, but
in the wintertime, they don't, there's very, you have to clean off your solar panels to even, you know.
yeah, the way they make it work is they generate enough power during the summer to, no, there's nothing stored, it's just that it's a net for the year. So they generate enough power in the summer. We pay them 66 cents. Instead of it costing us 13 cents. So we subsidize 53 cents for every kilowatt they generate during the summer. So if you had a bunch of people out in the summer with solar, our outflow on that is material. I mean, fortunately, you can't put the panels on the lifts.
The other thing about that as
Yeah.
well, those 6 customers that we have, they don't pay their electric use through the year. We net it at the end of every year, and it's netted in July. So
Right.
that's the other thing too.
There's the
We're
cash impact.
losing that monthly revenue from those customers because it only gets netted once a year. So that's the other thing to
Right.
consider about that as well.
Well, it's probably, in the fairly distant future for us in any case, but at some point, there's going to be people required to put solar on their homes,
Whether we buy it or not.
whether we buy it or not, and that's going to be a weird situation.
Right. I mean, in my mind, the practical alternative, assuming the law allows that, and I haven't read it, would be for us to acquire a portion of a solar farm in Fresno, and then as homes are built, transfer proportional ownership to the home, and they would be much better off in terms of the costs. So that.
Yeah.
So we might want to. It might make sense to have some sort of plan where we could offer an alternative. I mean, assuming there was enough construction going on to warrant it.
Well, during the next construction boom, whenever that is, we'll put that on the planning committee agenda. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other items under general discussion? If none, the board is going to recess and move into closed session for talk about potential litigation concerning a PG&E interconnection agreement. So I thank you all for attending.